The autumn wind carried the scent of falling leaves through the open window of the Hokage's private chambers, a gentle whisper that seemed to mark the passage of time itself. Uzumaki Naruto, 7th Hokage of Konohagakure, sat propped against thick pillows, his weathered face creased with the lines of 78 years well lived. The orange of his favorite color had long since faded from his wardrobe, replaced by the dignified robes of his office, though even now, a small orange flower sat in a vase by his bedside, a gift from Himawari. The room was crowded but quiet, filled with the people who had defined his life. Sakura stood nearest, her medical chakra a soothing green glow as she monitored his failing vitals with the expertise of decades. Her pink hair had silvered at the temples, and tears tracked silently down her cheeks despite her professional composure. She had told him 3 days ago that there was nothing more she could do. The simple ravages of time could not be healed, not even by the greatest medical ninja in the world. Sasuke stood by the window, his single Rinnegan eye closed as if he couldn't bear to witness this moment with the power that saw all truths. His arm, the one he'd lost so long ago and never replaced, would never again clash with Naruto's fist. The last Uchiha's jaw was clenched tight, his characteristic stoicism the only thing keeping him composed. You know, Naruto's voice emerged as barely more than a whisper, yet everyone in the room leaned forward to catch every word. I always thought I'd go out fighting some crazy villain, maybe protecting the village from another moon falling or something equally ridiculous. A weak chuckle rippled through the room. Shikamaru, white-haired and leaning heavily on a cane, shook his head. That would be too troublesome, even for you. You've already done enough of that for 10 lifetimes. 20 lifetimes, Shikamaru-sensei. Boruto's voice carried the strain of holding back sobs. Naruto's son sat on the edge of the bed, clutching his father's hand. Now in his 50s, Boruto had long since surpassed the rebellious youth he'd once been. But in this moment, he was simply a child afraid of losing his father. Himawari knelt on the other side, her face buried in the blankets, shoulders shaking. Hinata sat closest of all, her Byakugan deactivated, preferring to see her husband with the eyes of love rather than the eyes that could watch his chakra networks slowly, inevitably, dimming. She held his other hand, and their fingers intertwined with the ease of 50 years of marriage. Her hair, once dark as midnight, was now winter white, but to Naruto, she was still the beautiful girl who had confessed her love to him in the face of pain's assault. Hinata, Naruto breathed, turning his head to look at her. I'm sorry I can't stay longer. I promised you, when we were young, that I'd never let you cry again. You kept that promise, Hinata said firmly, though her voice wavered. You kept it every day. These tears, they're not from sadness alone. They're from gratitude. For every sunrise we watched together. For our children. For the life we built. Naruto's eyes, those brilliant blue eyes that had convinced so many enemies to become friends, scanned the room slowly. Kakashi stood near the door, now in his 90s but still standing straight, his mask finally removed in this intimate moment. His face was wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. Gaara had traveled from Suna, his expression carved from stone but his eyes betraying his grief. Killer Bee stood silently, for once without a rhyme. Rock Lee's signature smile was nowhere to be found. I see you, Konohamaru, Naruto called out to the current 8th Hokage, who stood at attention despite the tears streaming down his face. The village, you've done amazing. Kept the peace I fought for. I'm so proud. Naruto Naiken, Konohamaru's voice broke. I'm not ready. I don't know how to do this without knowing you're here. You've been doing it, for 10 years already, Naruto smiled. I've just been the old man giving unwanted advice. It was never unwanted, Konohamaru whispered. Naruto's breathing became more labored, and Sakura's medical assessment was clear in her expression. Minutes, not hours, remained. The 7th Hokage seemed to sense this too, and he squeezed Hinata's hand. Sasuke, he called, and his oldest friend finally turned from the window. Come here, you bastard. Despite everything, Sasuke's lips twitched in something almost like a smile as he approached the bed. Calling me names even now, dead last? Had to maintain tradition, Naruto grinned weakly. Listen. I won. Our bet. I'm dying surrounded by everyone I love. In the village we both protected. You helped make this peace, Don't you dare think otherwise. Sasuke's composure cracked, his hand gripping Naruto's shoulder. You idiot. We both won. That was always the point. Yeah, Naruto's voice was fading now, his eyes beginning to flutter. Guess you're right. We both. The monitors around him began to slow. Sakura stepped back, deactivating her medical jutsu. There was nothing to do now but bear witness. Naruto looked at each face one more time, committing them to memory, these people who had made his improbable life so impossibly rich. The orphan boy who had been hated and feared had died surrounded by more love than he had ever imagined possible. Thank you, he whispered to the room, to the world, to the life he'd lived. All of you. For seeing me. For believing in me. For loving me. I have no regrets. Hinata leaned down, pressing her forehead to his, the gesture they'd shared countless times. I love you, she whispered. In this life and whatever comes after. Love you too, Naruto breathed. All of you. So much. So very. His eyes closed. The monitors flatlined. And Uzumaki Naruto, the child of prophecy, the seventh Hokage, the hero of the fourth Shinobi World War, the man who had befriended demons and brought peace to the ninja world, breathed his last. The sound of weeping filled the room as the sun set over Konohagakure, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, as if the heavens themselves were honoring their lost hero. Naruto opened his eyes. He was standing, which was strange because he was fairly certain he should be dead. The weeping of his loved ones still echoed in his ears, but the sound was distant now, as if coming from underwater. Looking down, he saw his body was no longer the aged, failing form he'd inhabited moments before. Instead, he appeared as he had in his prime, perhaps around 30 years old, wearing the simple orange and black outfit he'd favored after the war. What the? He started, then looked around. He was nowhere. Or everywhere. The space around him was neither light nor dark but something in between, a vast emptiness that somehow felt full. There was no ground beneath his feet, yet he stood. No sky above, yet he sensed infinite space. Hello, Naruto. The voice was familiar, ancient, and young simultaneously, and Naruto spun to find himself face to face with a figure he'd met only a handful of times in his previous life. Hagoromo! Naruto exclaimed, looking at the Sage of Six Paths. The legendary figure appeared exactly as Naruto remembered, wise eyes, horned forehead protector, staff in hand, the very image of the myths that had proven themselves true. It is good to see you again, child of prophecy, Hagoromo said, a gentle smile on his weathered face. Though I confess I had hoped it would be under different circumstances. Am I dead? Naruto asked, though he knew the answer. Your body has ceased its functions, yes, Hagoromo confirmed. You have passed from the living world. Your soul stands now in the space between life and death, the place where spirits transition to the Pure Land. Naruto looked around the vast emptiness again. Then why aren't I there? In the Pure Land, I mean. I should be with my parents, with Jiraiya-sensei, with everyone who went before. Because I have intercepted your journey, Hagoromo said seriously. What I am about to tell you is of grave importance, Naruto. The choices you make here will determine the fate of the world you just left behind. Despite having just died, Naruto felt his heart rate increase, or whatever spiritual equivalent existed in this place. The world's in danger? But we achieved peace. The 5 nations are working together. There hasn't been a major conflict in decades. The peace you created is real and precious, Hagoromo assured him. But it is also fragile. My mother Kaguya was not the only Otsutsuki to take interest in your world. In approximately 20 years' time, another will come. One who makes Kaguya seem merciful by comparison. The name Otsutsuki sent a chill through Naruto's spirit. He remembered all too well the terror of facing Kaguya, the progenitor of chakra, a goddess who had sought to reclaim all chakra for herself. Who? How do you know this? His name is Ishiki Otsutsuki, Hagoromo said gravely. He came to your world alongside my mother, but was thought destroyed. In truth, he has been waiting, patient as only an immortal can be. In the timeline that would have unfolded without intervention, the Fourth Shinobi World War and your subsequent victory created certain conditions, seals and safeguards that would have kept him dormant for centuries more. Would have? Naruto caught the tense. What changed? Nothing yet, Hagoromo said. But the pattern I have observed across multiple timelines is troubling. In most futures I can perceive, Ishiki awakens 20 years from your death. And Naruto, without you the world falls. Boruto and his generation, despite their strength, are not prepared for a threat of this magnitude. The peace you built crumbles. The infinite Tsukuyomi that Madara dreamed of becomes reality under Ishiki's power, but far worse. Naruto clenched his fists, frustrated by his own powerlessness. Then what can I do? I'm dead. Is there some way to warn them? To prepare Boruto and the others? There is one possibility, Hagoromo said slowly. But it requires a sacrifice greater than death itself. It requires you to live again. Hope flared in Naruto's chest. You can bring me back? Send me back to my body? Not to the body you left, Hagoromo shook his head. That vessel has served its purpose and is beyond restoration. No, what I propose is far more complex. I offer you rebirth, Naruto, a chance to live your life again from the beginning, with all your memories intact. Naruto's mind reeled. You mean, as a baby? Starting over completely? Yes, Hagoromo confirmed. You would be born again as yourself, in the same time, the same circumstances. You would live through your childhood, your training, all of it, but with the knowledge and wisdom of your 78 years. That's... Naruto struggled to process it. That's incredible. I could save so many people. Jiraiya-sensei, Niji, Asuma, everyone who died in the war. I could prevent... Wait, Hagoromo held up a hand. Before you accept, you must understand the full scope of what I'm offering, and what it will cost. Changing the past is not simple. Every alteration you make creates ripples, consequences you cannot foresee. The future you knew, your marriage to Hinata, your children, all of it, would be changed. There is no guarantee those same events would occur. That stopped Naruto cold. You mean Boruto and Himawari might not be born? They might be born different, or not at all, Hagoromo said gently. The relationships you forged, the specific moments that defined your life, all would be subject to change. You would be gambling everything you achieved for the possibility of something better. Naruto was silent for a long moment. The faces of his children, his grandchildren, flashed through his mind. Could he risk their very existence? However, Hagoromo continued, if you choose to move on to the Pure Land, the timeline continues as it would have. Your loved ones live out their lives. But in 20 years, Ishiki comes, and all you built is destroyed anyway. Your descendants would face a horror they cannot overcome. Some choice, Naruto muttered. Risk everything on a chance to save the future, or guarantee the future falls apart anyway. There is one more element to this proposition, Hagoromo said. To give you the power necessary to face Ishiki and handle the changes you'll create, I offer you a gift unlike any I've given before. You would be reborn not just with your memories and your own powers, but with the abilities of every major enemy you've ever defeated. Naruto's eyes widened. What? Zabuza's mastery of silent killing and water manipulation. Haku's ice release. Orochimaru's forbidden techniques and regeneration. Gaara's sand manipulation from before you freed him from Shikaku's influence. Kabuto's medical expertise. Pain's Rinnegan and Six Paths techniques. Obito's Kamui and space-time manipulation. Madara's combat genius and wood release. And yes, even Kagaya's dimension-shifting abilities and knowledge of the Otsutsuki. The sheer scope of it was overwhelming. That's impossible. No one person could contain all of that. No ordinary person, no, Hagoromo agreed. But you are no ordinary person, Naruto Uzumaki. You are the reincarnation of my son Azura. You have contained the power of all nine-tailed beasts. You have wielded Six Paths chakra. Your body and soul have been forged in battles that would destroy lesser beings. You are one of the few who could survive such an amalgamation of power. But those were my enemies, Naruto protested. I defeated them through my own strength, my own way. Taking their powers feels like cheating. Like admitting I couldn't do it on my own. Hagoromo's expression grew stern. Pride is a luxury you cannot afford, not with the stakes so high. You think Ishiki will care about fair play? He is a being who has spent thousands of years perfecting the art of destruction. He will use every advantage, every trick, every ounce of power at his disposal. To face him with anything less than absolute strength is to guarantee failure. Even so, Naruto argued, those powers come from people I fought to stop. Madara tried to put the world in an eternal illusion. Kagaya wanted to turn everyone into white Zetsu. If I have their powers, their techniques, won't I be tempted to use them the same way? That is the true test, Hagoromo acknowledged. Having the power of your enemies and not becoming them. Wielding Madara's strength without his arrogance. Using Obito's techniques without his despair. Possessing Kagaya's knowledge without her contempt for humanity. It will be a battle not just against external enemies, but against the corruption that power brings. Naruto thought of Sasuke, of how the quest for power had nearly consumed his best friend. He thought of all the enemies he'd faced who had started with good intentions before power twisted them into monsters. Will I still be me? He asked quietly. That is entirely up to you, Hagoromo said. The powers will be yours to command, but they come with echoes, fragments of personality, memories, instincts from those who originally possessed them. You will hear their voices in your mind at times, especially when you use their techniques. Resisting their influence while utilizing their strength will require every bit of your willpower. So I'd have Madara whispering in my head about the infinite Tsukuyomi? Orochimaru tempting me with forbidden jutsu? Yes, Hagoromo confirmed bluntly. The power comes with a price. It always does. But I have faith in you, Naruto. You have turned enemies into friends your entire life. Perhaps you can do the same with the enemies within. Naruto was quiet for a long time, thinking. The choice before him was perhaps the hardest he'd ever faced. Die peacefully and let the future fall to ruin, or live again with the weight of godlike power and the responsibility to prevent catastrophe. He thought of Boruto, how his son had grown into a fine shinobi and father. He thought of little Himawari, who had inherited her mother's kindness and her father's determination. He thought of all the children and grandchildren, the generations he would be risking by changing the past. But then he thought of the faces he couldn't save in his first life. Neji, dying to protect him and Hinata. Jiraiya, killed gathering intelligence on pain. Asuma, leaving Kurenai and his unborn child. All the Konoha shinobi who had fallen in the war. And before that, the countless victims of the ninja system, orphans like himself, child soldiers, people ground up by a cycle of hatred that had taken decades to break. If he could save them, shouldn't he try? If I do this, Naruto said slowly, I want to be clear about something. I won't become like them. I won't use these powers to dominate or control. I'll use them to protect, to save people, to build something better than I managed the first time. I would expect nothing less, Hagoromo smiled. And I'll find a way to have the family I love, Naruto continued with growing conviction. Maybe things will be different, maybe Boruto and Himawari will be born in different circumstances, but I'll still love Hinata. I'll still be a father. I'll still be myself. That determination is why I chose you for this, Hagoromo said. So, what is your answer, child of prophecy? Will you rest in the Pure Land, or will you be reborn to face destiny once more? Naruto took a deep breath, or the spiritual equivalent. He thought of what he always said when faced with an impossible challenge, the phrase that had defined his entire existence. I never go back on my word. That's my ninja way, he said firmly. I made a promise to create a world where kids don't have to cry, where peace is real. If that peace is threatened, then I'll fight for it again. And again. As many times as it takes. He looked Hagoromo directly in the eyes. I accept. Send me back. I'll bear this burden, these powers, these voices. I'll face whatever comes. Because that's what I do. I never give up. Hagoromo's smile was radiant. Then it shall be so. But Naruto, one final warning. The enemy inheritance, as I call it, will not manifest all at once. Your infant body could not contain such power. The abilities will awaken gradually as you grow, often triggered by emotional states or situations that mirror when you first encountered these enemies. You will need to train, to master each power as it emerges. I understand, Naruto nodded. And remember, Hagoromo added seriously, changing too much too quickly could create paradoxes, could alert forces best left unaware of your knowledge. You must be strategic, careful. The loudmouth rushing in won't work this time. Hey! Naruto protested, then grinned sheepishly. Okay, yeah, fair point. I'll try to be more like Shikamaru. Strategic and stuff. The fact that you recognize the need is promising, Hagoromo chuckled. Now then, are you ready? The transition will be disorienting. You will experience your entire birth again, but this time aware and remembering everything. It will not be pleasant. Naruto straightened his shoulders, the gesture so familiar that it transcended physical form. I've been through a lot worse. Let's do this, old man. Very well. Hagoromo raised his staff, and it began to glow with an otherworldly light. May fortune favor you, Naruto Uzumaki. May you forge a better world with the tools I've given you, and may you never lose sight of who you truly are. The light grew brighter, encompassing everything. Naruto felt himself dissolving, his spiritual form breaking apart into component pieces. It should have been terrifying, but instead, he felt a strange peace. As his consciousness began to fragment and reform, he heard Hagoromo's voice one last time. Remember, the greatest power is not in the jutsu you wield, but in the bonds you create. Never forget that, even when surrounded by the echoes of your enemies. Then there was only light, and warmth, and the sensation of being unmade and remade simultaneously. The first thing Naruto became aware of was wetness. The second was cold. The third was sound, muffled, distant, but growing clearer. Voices. It's a boy! Someone exclaimed. No, Naruto's mind screamed, even as his infant mouth opened to release his first cry. No, I'm not ready, I'm not. But his body, his new old body, operated on instincts beyond his control. He wailed, the sound of a healthy newborn, even as his consciousness reeled from the shock of existing in such a tiny, helpless form. Memories crashed over him in waves. 78 years of life, compressed and contained in a mind barely capable of processing the present moment. He saw flashes, Hinata's face as she said I love you for the last time. Boruto clutching his hand. Sasuke's single eye filled with unshed tears. The monitors flatlining. Death, but also, the Sage of Six Paths. The offer. The powers he now carried. He tried to move his limbs and found them weak, uncoordinated. Panic set in. How was he supposed to do anything like this? He couldn't even lift his head, couldn't speak, couldn't. Let me see him, a weak voice said, and Naruto felt himself being placed in someone's arms. He forced his eyes open, vision blurry and unfocused, but he could make out a face above him. A woman with red hair, exhausted but smiling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mother, his mind supplied. Kushina. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His mother, who he'd only met briefly during the war when her chakra ghost had manifested. His mother, who would die tonight protecting him from the Nine Tails. Hi there, Kushina whispered, her voice tender. I'm your mother. Your name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. You're going to do great things, believe it. Naruto wanted to speak, to tell her he knew, that he remembered, that he was sorry he couldn't save her. But all that emerged was another infant's cry. He's got your energy, Kushina, another voice said, and Naruto's unfocused vision shifted to see a blond man leaning over them. Minato. His father. The fourth Hokage. Both of them, right here, alive. Both of them, hours away from death. He's perfect, Kushina said, holding him close. Our little miracle. The medical ninja around them were smiling, cleaning up, preparing to move mother and child to a recovery room. None of them knew what was coming. In just a few hours, a masked man claiming to be Madara would attack, would rip the Nine Tails from Kushina's seal, would set in motion the events that would leave Naruto an orphan, unless he could stop it. But how? He was an infant. He couldn't even control his own bladder, let alone fight off a Beetle and a rampaging tailed beast. Calm down, he told himself, using the meditation techniques he'd learned over decades. Think. You have your memories, your knowledge of what's coming. You may not be able to fight, but you can prepare. You know this night. You know what happens. As Kushina held him close, Naruto focused inward, trying to sense the power that Hagoromo had promised. At first, there was nothing, just the vast emptiness of an infant's undeveloped chakra system. But then, in the deepest parts of his being, he felt it, a vast reservoir, locked away, dormant but present. The powers were there, sealed within him, waiting. But Hagoromo had been right. His infant body couldn't access them yet. It would take time, growth, training. He had knowledge and memories, but no power to act on them. Not yet. The frustration was overwhelming. To know his parents would die, to be held in his mother's arms knowing these were the only hours he'd have with her, and to be unable to do anything about it, it was a special kind of torture. "What's wrong, little one?" Kushina asked, noticing his distress. "Don't cry. Mama's here. Mama will always protect you." "But you can't," Naruto wanted to scream. "You can't protect me from what's coming. You'll die, both of you will die, and I'll be alone for years because I'm too weak to stop it." Then, like a whisper in his mind, he heard a voice. Not his own, but somehow familiar, carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. "You cannot save everyone, not immediately. Accept this. Learn from it. Let this pain fuel your determination, but do not let it break you. The path forward is long. This is only the beginning." The voice faded, leaving Naruto shaken. Was that Hagoromo? Or perhaps one of the enemies whose power he now carried? The wisdom felt like it could have come from Madara or even Orochimaru, a pragmatic assessment of an impossible situation. He forced himself to stop crying, to calm his infant body through sheer force of will. Kushina seemed relieved, smiling down at him. "There we go," she cooed. "What a strong boy you are already. If only you knew," Naruto thought. As they were transported to the recovery area, Naruto's mind began to work, planning despite his helplessness. He couldn't stop tonight's attack, but he could prepare for the future. He knew everything that would happen for the next 20 years. Every threat, every tragedy, every opportunity. The Uchiha massacre. Orochimaru's attack during the Chunin exams. Akatsuki's hunt for the tailed beasts. The Fourth Shinobi World War. And beyond that, the threats from his son's generation. But more importantly, he knew who he needed to save, who he needed to befriend, who he needed to stop before they could cause harm. Zabuza and Haku didn't have to die in the land of waves. Gaara could be freed from his demons sooner. Miji could be saved from his fate. Jiraiya could avoid the trap that killed him. Itachi could be spared his tragic burden. Nagato and Konan could be shown another way before they fell too deep into darkness. And Sasuke, his best friend, could be kept from the path of vengeance entirely if the Uchiha massacre was prevented. So much could be changed. So much could be saved. But it would require patience, planning, and perfect execution. The hyperactive knucklehead ninja who rushed into every situation wouldn't work this time. He needed to be smarter, more careful. He would need to become someone new while staying true to who he was at his core. As Kushina and Minato fussed over him, unaware of the awareness behind his infant eyes, Naruto made a series of promises to himself. First, he would survive tonight. His parents would die, that much seemed inevitable given his current powerlessness. But he would honor their sacrifice by living fully and purposefully. Second, he would master the powers he'd been given, every single one, without letting them corrupt him. He would prove that having the strength of his enemies didn't mean becoming them. Third, he would save everyone he could. Not recklessly, not stupidly, but methodically and carefully. He would use his knowledge to prevent every tragedy he could foresee. Fourth, he would build a better world than the one he'd left. A world where the next Ishiki or Kaguya would find not a divided, weakened resistance, but a united, prepared defense. And finally, he would stay true to himself. No matter what voices whispered in his head, no matter what dark techniques he might need to learn, he would remain Naruto Uzumaki, the ninja who never gave up, who turned enemies into friends, who protected his precious people above all else. The hours passed. Kushina rested while Minato made arrangements for their security. The medical staff came and went, and Naruto, trapped in his infant body, could only wait and remember and plan. As the sun set on October 10th, he felt the first stirrings of the attack beginning. Distant explosions. Shouting. The chakra in the air turning violent and afraid. Kushina grabbed him close, her face pale. "Minato," she called, and the fourth Hokage appeared instantly at her side. "It's starting," Minato said grimly. "We need to move you now." They ran, moving through Konoha's secret passages to the safe house prepared for this moment. But Naruto knew it wouldn't matter. Obito would find them. The Nine Tails would be released. His parents would make their final stand. And all he could do was bear witness to a tragedy he'd seen before, but this time with full awareness of everything being lost. As Kushina held him tight, her chakra chains beginning to manifest to prepare for the coming battle, Naruto felt something stir within him, a response to the desperate situation, to the overwhelming emotions of fear and love and impending loss. Deep in his sealed powers, something cracked open, just slightly. For a brief moment, he felt it. The ice-cold touch of Haku's bloodline. The killing intent of Zabuza's techniques. The analytical observation of Kabuto's genius. The powers were there, waiting. Not accessible yet, not in any meaningful way. But present. Real. Growing. Someday, he would wield them all. Someday, he would be strong enough to protect everyone. But today, he was still just a baby, watching his parents prepare to die for him for the second time in his existence. "I love you," Kushina whispered to him as the seal on her stomach began to weaken, as the Nine Tails chakra started to leak out. "Always remember, your mother loves you." "I know," Naruto wanted to say. "I've always known. And I promise you, I'll make you proud. I'll save this world you're dying to protect. I'll do it right this time." But all he could do was cry, as the longest night of his 2 lives began. The cycle was starting again, and this time, Naruto Uzumaki had the knowledge, the memories, and soon, the power to change everything. The only question was whether he could do it without losing himself in the process. The first 3 years of Naruto's second life were an exercise in patience that would have driven his younger self absolutely insane. Trapped in a body that could barely walk, let alone perform ninjutsu, with a mind containing 78 years of memories and combat experience, he spent countless hours simply observing, planning, and waiting for the day he could finally act. The night of his birth had unfolded exactly as he remembered, or rather, as he'd been told. Obito had attacked, the Nine Tails had been released, and Minato and Kushina had sacrificed themselves to seal the beast within him. But this time, Naruto had been fully aware throughout the entire ordeal, feeling the immense chakra of Kurama being forced into his infant body, experiencing the sealing process from the inside. It had been agony beyond description, but it had also been illuminating. He could feel the mechanics of his father's seal in ways he never had before, understanding it with the enhanced perception that came from possessing fragments of Orochimaru's analytical genius and Kabuto's medical knowledge. Even as an infant, even without being able to access those powers directly, the knowledge colored his perception. The Nine Tails had been confused by him from the start. "You're not like other infants," Kurama had growled in their first real interaction, when Naruto was perhaps 6 months old and had finally developed enough cognitive control to consciously enter his mindscape. "Your chakra, it tastes old. Ancient. What are you?" Naruto, appearing in his mindscape as his adult self rather than his infant body, had smiled at the giant fox behind the cage. "An old friend, Kurama. Though you don't know that yet." The fox's eyes had widened. "You know my name?" "Impossible. The only ones who, the sage of 6 paths told me," Naruto had said simply. "Among other things. We're going to be partners, Kurama. True partners. But that's going to take time. For now, just be patient with me, okay?" Kurama had been suspicious, hostile even, but there had been a flicker of curiosity in those ancient eyes. Over the following years, Naruto had visited regularly, slowly building a rapport with the tailed beast, treating him with respect and honesty in a way that clearly confused the fox. "Why do you speak to me as an equal?" Kurama had demanded during one visit, when Naruto was perhaps 2 years old in body. "I am a demon, a monster. That is what all humans believe." "You're not a monster," Naruto had replied firmly. "You're a being of immense power and intelligence who's been used and abused by humans for generations. You have every right to be angry, but that anger doesn't define you, and it won't define our relationship. I promise you that." It would take years to fully earn Kurama's trust. He knew that from his first life. But starting early, with honesty and respect, would make all the difference. In the outside world, Naruto's early childhood was exactly as he remembered it in the worst ways. The orphanage matron's cold treatment. The other children's fear and avoidance. The villagers' glares and whispered hatreds. But this time, he understood it all. He wasn't confused or hurt by the rejection in the same way. He knew why they feared him, knew about the Nine Tails, knew that their hatred came from loss and pain rather than any true evil. It still stung. He was human, after all, even with an old soul, but he could contextualize it. What frustrated him most was his inability to demonstrate that he was different. At 1 year old, walking and basic speech were the limits of his abilities. At 2, he could run and form simple sentences. At 3, he was still bound by the natural limitations of a toddler's body. He tried to accelerate his development where he could. When alone in his small apartment, the orphanage had kicked him out at age 2, claiming he was too disruptive, which was code for "we're afraid of him." He attempted basic chakra exercises. That was when he discovered the first true manifestation of his inherited powers. It was a cold winter night, a few weeks after his 4th birthday. Naruto sat in his apartment, which was barely heated, wearing layers of thin clothing that did little against the chill. He'd been trying to circulate his chakra to warm himself, a basic technique he remembered from his academy days. But something else responded to his call. The moisture in the air around him suddenly crystallized, forming delicate patterns of frost across his skin. The temperature dropped further, and Naruto gasped as he saw his breath mist in the air. Ice began forming on the walls, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "What the?" he started, then felt it. A presence in his mind, a voice that wasn't quite Kurama's, wasn't quite his own. "The ice comes when the heart is cold and pure," the voice whispered, gentle and sad. "When you understand true loneliness, the crystals form." Haku. The realization struck him hard. This was Haku's voice, or rather, an echo of it, a fragment of personality attached to the ice-release bloodline limit that Naruto now possessed. He remembered the young ninja who had served Zabuza, who had chosen death over a life without purpose. "Haku," Naruto whispered aloud, watching the ice spread across his floor. "I remember you. I remember your sacrifice." The presence seemed to pause, as if surprised at being acknowledged. "You know me? But I have not yet been born. Have I?" The question hung in the air, and Naruto realized the complexity of what he was dealing with. These weren't true ghosts or spirits, but echoes, fragments of personality and memory encoded into the bloodline limits and techniques themselves. They existed in a strange state, aware enough to communicate but not truly conscious. "It's complicated," Naruto said softly, willing the ice to recede. To his relief, it obeyed, melting away as quickly as it had formed. "But yes, I know you, and I promise, when we meet in this timeline, things will be different. You won't have to die believing you're just a tool." The presence faded, but Naruto could still feel it there, nestled within his chakra system like a seed waiting to sprout. Haku's ice release was now accessible to him, though he'd need to practice to use it effectively. Over the following months, other powers began to manifest in small ways. During a moment of intense frustration, when a shopkeeper refused to sell him food, Naruto felt killing intent wash over the area, Zabuza's signature ability to paralyze with fear. The shopkeeper had turned pale and stumbled backward, and Naruto had immediately suppressed it, horrified at how easily the technique had emerged. "The intent to kill is not inherently evil," Zabuza's gruff voice had echoed in his mind. "It's a tool, like any blade. What matters is who wields it and why." When he'd cut his hand badly on a broken glass, the wound had healed in seconds, flesh knitting together with the enhanced regeneration inherited from Orochimaru. That had been accompanied by a silky, sinister voice suggesting all manner of forbidden experiments he could conduct with such abilities. "Shut up," Naruto had muttered, disturbing himself with how much that voice sounded like the snake Sannin. "I'm not using this power for anything twisted." "Of course not," Orochimaru's echo had purred. "But knowledge itself is not evil, boy. Understanding the mechanics of life and death, of the body and spirit, that is merely science. What you do with that knowledge defines you." It was insidious, how reasonable these voices could sound. How they could take his own thoughts and twist them just slightly toward darker paths. Naruto realized he would need to be constantly vigilant against their influence. The most disturbing manifestation came when he was 4.5 years old. He'd been trying to access his chakra more consistently, attempting the basic academy exercises he remembered. As he focused, he felt something awaken in his eyes, a tingling, burning sensation. He'd rushed to the bathroom mirror and stared in horror at his reflection. His blue eyes were unchanged, but he could feel it there, lurking just beneath the surface. The Sharingan. No, more than that, if he pushed, he sensed he could access the Mangekyo Sharingan, the eternal Mangekyo, even the Rinnegan, all of Madara's ocular powers, sealed within his genetic structure, waiting to be called forth. Power is the only truth, Madara's voice had rumbled in his mind, deep and commanding. Everything else is illusion and weakness. You have the potential to surpass even me. Use it. Dominate. Make the world kneel. No, Naruto had said firmly, closing his eyes and suppressing the power. That's not my way. That was never my way. Then you are a fool, Madara's echo responded. And fools die while the strong reshape the world in their image. I'd rather be a fool who saves people than a genius who enslaves them, Naruto had shot back. The presence had retreated, but he could feel its disapproval, its constant pressure to embrace the power it offered. This was the true challenge Hagoromo had warned him about. The powers were incredible, potentially world-changing even at this early stage. But they came with the philosophies, the mindsets, the corrupting influences of the men who'd first wielded them. Every day was a battle not just to master the techniques, but to maintain his own identity against the tide of foreign personalities living in his head. By the time Naruto turned 4, he developed a careful plan for how to navigate his second childhood. He couldn't reveal too much too soon, that would raise questions he couldn't answer. But he also couldn't waste time pretending to be a normal child when apocalypse was coming. He needed to find a balance. His first strategic decision was regarding the Hokage. In his original timeline, he'd had minimal contact with Hiruzen Sarutobi as a child, seeing him as a distant figure who occasionally checked on him but never truly intervened in his suffering. This time would be different. Naruto began showing up at the Hokage Tower regularly, slipping past the ANBU guards with ease, a combination of his adult-level stealth skills and the natural tendency of people to overlook children. He'd appear in Hiruzen's office at random times, always polite, always curious, asking questions about ninjutsu and history that were far too advanced for a 4-year-old. The first time it happened, Hiruzen had nearly dropped his pipe in shock. "Naruto!" the old Hokage exclaimed, looking around for the ANBU who should have stopped the child. "How did you get in here?" "Through the window," Naruto said cheerfully, having climbed the tower's exterior wall using chakra adhesion, another skill that should be impossible for his age. "Hi Gigi. I wanted to ask you about the will of fire." Hiruzen had stared at him for a long moment, clearly trying to process how a 4-year-old had bypassed his security, and was now asking about philosophical concepts taught to Jonin candidates. "The will of fire?" Hiruzen repeated slowly. "Naruto, that's quite advanced. What do you know about it?" "That the people of the village are like a family," Naruto recited, giving the simple version he'd learned as a child. "And that the older generation protects and teaches the younger, like how flames pass from old wood to new." But I wanted to understand it better. It was a careful balance, showing intelligence and curiosity beyond his years, but not so much that it seemed impossible. Just enough to mark him as a prodigy, a genius child who might have inherited his father's talents. Hiruzen had smiled, clearly touched by the question. "Well then, why don't you sit down, and I'll explain it properly." That first conversation had led to regular visits. Naruto would appear in the Hokage's office several times a week, always with questions, always eager to learn. Sometimes he asked about history, sometimes about jutsu theory. Sometimes he simply wanted to talk about what it meant to be a ninja. Hiruzen clearly enjoyed these sessions, seeing in Naruto echoes of his own students from long ago. That same hunger for knowledge, that same earnest determination. The old Hokage had no idea he was actually talking to a 78-year-old soul in a child's body, but he recognized exceptional potential when he saw it. "You remind me of someone," Hiruzen said one day, after Naruto had asked a particularly insightful question about the nature of chakra. "Your father, actually." Minato had that same way of cutting through complex problems to find simple truths. Naruto felt his heart clench at the mention of his father. Really? What was he like? Hiruzen's expression grew wistful. Brilliant. Kind. Strong enough to face any enemy, but gentle enough to show mercy. He would have been very proud of you, Naruto. I'll make him proud, Naruto promised, meaning it with every fiber of his being. I'll become an amazing ninja. The best Hokage ever. The old man chuckled, ruffling Naruto's hair affectionately. I believe you will, my boy. You have a special light about you. Never let the darkness in this world extinguish it. If only you knew what darkness I'm carrying, Naruto thought, feeling the weight of Madara's power coiled within him like a sleeping dragon. Through these conversations, Naruto accomplished several goals. First, he established himself as exceptional in Hiruzen's eyes, which would lead to better training opportunities. Second, he built a genuine relationship with the Hokage, someone who could be an ally when he needed to make larger moves. And third, he planted seeds of information, casual mentions of concerns about the man with the one eye who attacked during my birth or questions about whether all the Uchiha are really planning something bad, like people say. He couldn't directly warn Hiruzen about future threats without revealing his foreknowledge, but he could nudge the old Hokage's attention in useful directions, making him more suspicious of Danzo's activities, more protective of the Uchiha clan, more aware of potential threats. It was manipulation, yes, but manipulation in service of preventing tragedies. Naruto had to keep reminding himself of that. His second strategic focus was training. His body was still young and limited, but he pushed it as far as he safely could. Every night, in the privacy of his apartment, or in isolated training grounds around Konoha, he practiced. Chakra control exercises came easily: tree walking, water walking, even the beginnings of leaf manipulation. His adult control combined with his child body's flexibility made for rapid progress. The inherited powers were trickier. They required not just physical ability but emotional resonance. Haku's ice release manifested most strongly when he felt lonely or isolated. Zabuza's techniques emerged when he was angry or determined to protect something. Orochimaru's abilities responded to curiosity and the desire for knowledge. Each power had its trigger, its emotional key. And each time he used one, he had to fight against the personality echo that came with it. One night, while practicing ice release in a secluded forest clearing, he'd managed to create a full-sized ice mirror, the beginning of Haku's crystal ice mirrors technique. But as he did, Haku's presence had surged in his mind, bringing with it a wave of melancholy and purposelessness. What am I? The echo whispered. A tool? A weapon? Where is my place in this world? You're more than a tool, Naruto had said aloud, speaking to the presence. You're a person with value, with worth beyond your usefulness to others. And I'll prove that to you. When we meet, when I save you in Zabuza, I'll show you that you can live for yourself. The presence had quieted, seeming almost comforted. These conversations with the echoes became a regular part of his training. He talked to Haku about finding purpose. He argued with Zabuza about the nature of strength. He debated philosophy with Madara's arrogant presence. He discussed the nature of immortality with Orochimaru's silky voice. It probably looked insane to any outside observer, a 4-year-old having intense conversations with himself in the woods. But it helped. By engaging with the echoes, by treating them as real entities worthy of debate rather than just intrusive thoughts, he could maintain his own identity while accessing their powers. You're handling this better than I expected, Kurama observed during one mindscape visit. Most humans would have been consumed by now. Multiple conflicting personalities, each with godlike power? That's a recipe for insanity. I've had practice dealing with different viewpoints, Naruto replied, thinking of all the enemies he'd converted to allies in his first life. And I learned something important over the years. Everyone's the hero of their own story. Even Madara thought he was saving the world. Even Obito believed he was creating true peace. Understanding why they think the way they do doesn't mean agreeing with them. Wise words from one so young, Kurama said, a hint of amusement in his tone. You really are an old soul, aren't you? Older than you'd believe, Naruto confirmed. By age 5, Naruto's reputation in Konoha had undergone a subtle shift. The villagers still feared and hated him for being the Nine-Tails container. That wouldn't change without major intervention. But among the ninja community, Whispers were spreading about the demon child's unusual abilities. He'd been spotted walking on water at age 4. He'd somehow survived a fall that should have broken bones without a scratch, Orochimaru's regeneration. He'd been seen creating ice in the middle of summer, Haku's bloodline. The ANBU watching him reported these anomalies to Hiruzen, who grew increasingly fascinated by his young charge. Some suspected the Ninetales was influencing him. Others thought he might have awakened some unknown bloodline limit. No one guessed the truth, that he carried the powers of a dozen of the most dangerous ninja in history. Naruto's first major intervention in the timeline came when he was 5 years old. In his original life, he'd met Sasuke Uchiha at the academy, and they'd developed a rivalry that had defined both their lives. But the Sasuke of that timeline had been shaped by trauma, by the massacre of his clan and the weight of vengeance. Naruto intended to prevent that massacre, but first, he needed to establish a relationship with the Uchiha clan's young prodigy. He found Sasuke training alone at one of the Uchiha's private training grounds. Even at age 6, Sasuke was exceptional, throwing kunai with precision, running through kata with fluid grace, pushing himself with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. Naruto watched from the tree-line, using Zabuza's silent killing technique to mask his presence. He observed Sasuke's techniques, noting the slight imperfections, the areas where the young Uchiha could improve. After about an hour, Sasuke paused, breathing hard, frustration evident on his face. He'd been trying to master a particular fire jutsu, but at 6 years old, he didn't yet have the chakra control or capacity to produce more than a few sparks. "Your breathing's wrong," Naruto called out, stepping from the trees. "That's why you can't maintain the chakra flow." Sasuke spun, kunai in hand, eyes wide with surprise. "Who are you? How long have you been watching?" "I'm Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto said cheerfully, deliberately using his childhood exuberance to seem less threatening. "And I've been watching for a while." "You're really good, but that fire jutsu you're trying, you need to build the chakra in your chest first, then release it in one burst. You're trying to maintain a constant flow, which is way harder." Sasuke's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "How would you know?" "You're younger than me. Age doesn't matter if you know what you're talking about," Naruto shrugged. "Try it my way. Build the chakra, then burst. What have you got to lose?" For a moment, Sasuke looked like he might refuse out of pride. But curiosity and frustration won out. He assumed the stance again, and this time, following Naruto's advice, he built the chakra in his chest before releasing it. A small but genuine flame burst from his mouth, lasting for nearly 3 seconds before guttering out. Sasuke's eyes widened in shock. "It worked. How did you?" "Told you." Naruto grinned. "Wanna train together? You can teach me some of that awesome taijutsu stuff, and I can help with the chakra control exercises." This was the beginning of a careful strategy. In the original timeline, Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry had been born from Naruto's jealousy of Sasuke's talent and Sasuke's annoyance at Naruto's persistence. This time, Naruto was establishing himself as a peer from the start, someone with valuable knowledge and skills, worthy of Sasuke's respect. Sasuke hesitated, clearly torn between his natural aloofness and his genuine surprise at Naruto's insight. Finally, he nodded curtly. "Fine. But don't slow me down." "Wouldn't dream of it," Naruto said, and thus began a friendship that would change everything. Over the following months, Naruto and Sasuke trained together regularly. Naruto was careful to reveal skills gradually, always with plausible explanations. He'd read about it in a library book, he'd figured it out through experimentation. Hiruzen had mentioned it during one of their talks. But he also learned from Sasuke, studying the Uchiha's techniques and style not just to improve himself, but to understand the clan better. He needed intelligence if he was going to prevent the massacre. Through Sasuke, Naruto learned about Itachi, the prodigy who had graduated the academy at age 7, who was now a successful ANBU operative at just 13. Sasuke spoke of his older brother with a mix of admiration and frustration, clearly desperate to catch up to Itachi's impossible standards. "He's amazing," Sasuke said one day, after a particularly grueling training session. "But sometimes I feel like he's disappointed in me. Like I'm not progressing fast enough." Naruto thought of the Itachi he'd known, the broken man who'd massacred his clan under orders, who'd lived as a villain to protect the village, who died still trying to guide Sasuke toward the right path. He remembered their final conversation, when Itachi had entrusted him with the truth and asked him to protect Sasuke. "I'll save you too," Naruto thought. "I'll save your whole family. You won't have to bear that burden this time. Your brother cares about you," Naruto said firmly. "Even if he doesn't show it the way you want. And you're already amazing, Sasuke. You just need to stop comparing yourself to a genius and focus on being the best version of yourself." Sasuke looked at him oddly. "That's surprisingly wise. For you." "Hey! I can be wise," Naruto protested, then grinned. Sometimes, through his friendship with Sasuke, Naruto began visiting the Uchiha compound more regularly. He met Fugaku, the clan head, who regarded him with suspicion at first, another villager who saw only the demon fox. But Naruto was polite, respectful, and clearly a positive influence on Sasuke's training, so Fugaku grudgingly tolerated his presence. More importantly, Naruto met Mikoto, Sasuke's mother. She was kind in a way that reminded him painfully of his own mother, and she seemed to see past the fox to the boy beneath. "You're welcome here anytime, Naruto," she said warmly after he joined the family for dinner one evening. "Any friend of Sasuke's is a friend of ours." Fugaku had grunted but didn't contradict his wife. Itachi, who was present that evening, had simply observed Naruto with those deep, analytical eyes that saw far too much. After dinner, Itachi had cornered Naruto alone in the garden. "You're not like other children," Itachi said quietly, his tone neither accusing nor friendly, simply stating fact. "The way you move, the way you speak, the knowledge you possess, it's unusual. Who are you really, Naruto Uzumaki?" Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. Itachi was dangerous precisely because he was so perceptive. He couldn't reveal the truth, but he needed to give an answer that would satisfy the prodigy's suspicions. "I'm someone who wants to change things," Naruto said carefully, meeting Itachi's eyes with his own. "Someone who wants to prevent unnecessary suffering. Someone who believes the cycle of hatred can be broken." Itachi's eyes widened fractionally, surprise from someone who rarely showed emotion. "Those are very specific phrases. Where did you learn them?" "From watching the world," Naruto replied. "From seeing how people hurt each other over and over. From wanting something better." "Isn't that why you became a ninja? To protect people?" For a long moment, Itachi simply stared at him. Then, incredibly, the corners of his mouth twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Perhaps you're right," Itachi said softly. "Perhaps there is hope for change, if even children can see the need for it. Tell me, Naruto, if you could prevent a great tragedy, but it required sacrifice and difficult choices, would you make them?" The question hung heavy in the air, loaded with meaning that Naruto understood perfectly. Itachi was already being groomed by Danzo, already being maneuvered into position for the massacre. He was asking, in his oblique way, whether there were alternatives to the dark path he could see approaching. "I believe there's always another way," Naruto said firmly. "Sacrifice might seem necessary, but usually that's because we're not thinking creatively enough, and the most difficult choice isn't always the right one. Sometimes the hardest thing is choosing hope over despair." Itachi's eyes, those eyes that would one day awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan through tragedy, studied him intensely. "You speak like someone who's seen much more than 5 years should allow, but perhaps that's a gift. Keep that hope, Naruto. Don't let this world extinguish it." With that cryptic statement, Itachi had departed, leaving Naruto alone in the garden with his racing thoughts. The interaction confirmed what Naruto had suspected. The timeline was already in motion toward the massacre. Danzo was working his poison, Itachi was being manipulated, and the Uchiha clan's dissatisfaction was growing. He needed to accelerate his plans. Naruto's next target was Danzo Shimura himself. In his original timeline, Danzo had been a wound that festered at Konoha's heart, a man who believed he was protecting the village through ruthless pragmatism, but who ultimately caused more harm than good. He'd orchestrated the Uchiha massacre, stolen Shirsue's eye, experimented on children, and manipulated events toward his vision of a militarized Konoha. This time, Naruto intended to cut out that infection before it could spread, but he was 5 years old. He couldn't exactly march into Root headquarters and expose Danzo's crimes. He needed to be subtle, strategic, and above all, careful. His first move was information gathering. Using the silent killing technique to mask his presence and Obito's Kami in its most limited form, just enough to slip through solid objects for brief moments, Naruto began spying on route operations. It was incredibly risky. If Danzo discovered him, the old war hawk would likely have him eliminated or, worse, recruited into route. But Naruto was careful, using his adult knowledge of how ANBU operated combined with the stealth techniques of multiple master assassins. What he discovered made his blood boil. Children, some younger than him, being trained as emotionless weapons. Experiments using Hashirama cells, creating failed would release users who died in agony. Shursui Uchiha being groomed as an asset, his incredible Mangekyo Sharingan power eyed hungrily by Danzo. And at the center of it all, plans for the Uchiha. Documents outlining the solution to the Uchiha problem. Complete extermination, with Itachi as the unwitting executioner. Naruto photographed everything he could with a camera he'd stolen, using Kabuto's steady hands and medical precision to ensure clear images even in darkness. He documented names, dates, crimes. He built a case piece by piece. But he couldn't simply hand this information to Hiruzen. A 5-year-old having such intelligence would raise impossible questions. He needed a proxy, someone who could discover this information through legitimate means. The answer came to him during one of his training sessions with Sasuke. He overheard Fugaku Uchiha discussing clan business with another Uchiha elder, mentioning increasing tensions with the village leadership and frustration with being relegated to the police force while excluded from real power. The Uchiha were already suspicious of being marginalized. They were already investigating whether the village leadership could be trusted. If Naruto could point them in the right direction, they might uncover Danzo's plot themselves. It would require precision timing and careful manipulation, but it could work. Naruto began leaving anonymous notes in places where Uchiha clan members would find them. Simple things at first: watch the foundation, count your missing, ask about the eyes. Cryptic enough to avoid attribution, specific enough to spark investigation. The Uchiha police force, already primed to be suspicious, began investigating. They noticed discrepancies in Root's activities. They realized that several Uchiha had gone missing over the years, officially listed as deserters or killed in action, but with no bodies recovered. Fugaku, in particular, became obsessed with uncovering the truth. And as the clan head investigated, he began to uncover the edges of Danzo's conspiracy. Meanwhile, Naruto continued his training, pushing his inherited abilities further. At 5 years old, he could now reliably use Haku's ice release for basic constructs and weapons, Zabuza's silent killing and water manipulation, Orochimaru's enhanced regeneration and flexibility, Kabuto's medical knowledge and chakra scalpel technique, basic Sharingan, though he kept this hidden and only activated it when completely alone. The more advanced powers, Pain's Rinnegan abilities, Obito's full Kamui, Madara's combat techniques, Kaigaya's dimension shifting, remained largely sealed. His body simply wasn't developed enough to channel that much power safely. But what he had was already formidable. He was likely the most dangerous 5-year-old in the world, if anyone had known to measure such things. The voices in his head had become more insistent as he used the powers more frequently. You could end this all so simply, Madara's presence whispered during one late-night training session. Activate the Rinnegan. Use the human path to rip Danzo's soul from his body. Who would mourn him? Who would question it? I would question it, Naruto muttered, forming ice kunai and throwing them at a tree. Murder isn't the answer. Murder is such an ugly word, Orochimaru's voice purred. Think of it as removing a cancer. You're not killing a person, you're eliminating a threat. It's practically medical. Still murder, Naruto insisted. There are better ways. Are there? Zabuza's gruff voice challenged. In my experience, some people only understand one language, the language of the blade. Danzo is a warrior. He'd respect a warrior's death more than a politician's disgrace. Maybe, Naruto conceded, but I'm not him. I don't solve problems by killing people. I never have. That's not changing now. Then you're a fool who will watch others die because of your weakness, Madara spat. No, Naruto said firmly, stopping his training to address the voices directly. I'm someone who believes there's always another path. You all lost sight of that. Zabuza, you thought you had to kill to be strong. Orochimaru, you thought immortality required sacrificing your humanity. Madara, you thought peace required taking away people's free will. You were all wrong, and I'm going to prove it. The voices went quiet, and in that silence, Naruto felt a small victory. He was maintaining his identity, holding firm to his beliefs even in the face of their constant pressure. Kurama, watching from within the seal, rumbled with approval. You're stronger than they are, Kit. Don't forget that. I won't, Naruto promised. By the time Naruto turned 6, his carefully laid plans were bearing fruit. The Uchiha investigation into Danzo had progressed far enough that Fugaku had requested a private meeting with Hiruzen, presenting evidence of Root's illegal activities. Hiruzen, already suspicious thanks to Naruto's careful comments over the years, had listened. An official investigation was launched, with Uchiha representatives included to ensure transparency. Danzo, sensing his operations being exposed, had gone to ground, ceasing his most obvious illegal activities while trying to maintain his influence through political channels. It wasn't perfect. Danzo was still free, still dangerous, but the immediate threat of the Uchiha massacre had been disrupted. Itachi was no longer being groomed for that terrible purpose. Shursui was under Fugaku's protection, his eyes safe from Danzo's greed. The timeline had changed significantly, and Naruto had done it while maintaining his cover as simply a talented, unusual child. But he knew this was only the beginning. Danzo would regroup. Orochimaru was still out there, conducting his twisted experiments. Akatsuki was forming in the shadows, and in the future, threats like Pain, Obito, Madara, and ultimately Ishiki still loomed. He'd bought time, changed the trajectory of events. But the war for the future was far from over. As Naruto's 6th birthday approached, he received his academy enrollment papers. In the original timeline, he'd been excited but underprepared, the dead last who barely scraped by through determination and luck. This time would be dramatically different. The night before his first day at the academy, Naruto stood in his apartment, looking at himself in the mirror. He looked like any other 6-year-old, bright blue eyes, blonde hair, whisker marks on his cheeks. But behind those eyes was a lifetime of experience, and a dozen enemy powers waiting to be unleashed. Are you ready for this? Kurama asked from within the seal. As ready as I'll ever be, Naruto replied. The academy is where so many important relationships begin. Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Kiba, Shino, Hinata. I need to befriend them all early, build alliances before tragedy can tear us apart. And what about the girl? Kurama asked, a knowing tone in his voice. Hinata. You spoke of her before, said she was your wife in the other life. Naruto felt his heart clench. Hinata. His beloved Hinata, who he'd left behind when he died, who he'd promised to never let cry again. She was 6 years old now, shy and overlooked by her father, convinced she was weak. I'll protect her, Naruto said softly. I'll show her she's strong from the beginning. I'll make sure she never doubts her worth. Just remember, Kurama cautioned, she's not the same person you married. She's a child. Whatever relationship you build with her will grow from different soil. I know, Naruto acknowledged. But the core of who she is, her kindness, her strength, her beautiful heart, that's always been there. I fell in love with those qualities, and they'll still exist in her now. I just have to be patient. He thought about all the people he'd meet at the academy. In his original timeline, he'd been so focused on proving himself, on gaining acknowledgement, that he'd missed so many opportunities to truly connect with his classmates. Shikamaru's genius hidden beneath laziness. Choji's loyalty masked by insecurity about his weight. Ino's intelligence overshadowed by her rivalry with Sakura. Kiba's bravado covering his need for validation. Shino's loneliness behind his collected exterior. And Hinata. Sweet Hinata, who had loved him from the beginning but been too shy to say so, who had been willing to die for him against Pain, who had stood beside him through everything. This time, he'd see them all. Really see them, the way only someone with a lifetime of perspective could. The academy will be easy for you, Kurama observed. With your knowledge and abilities, you'll outperform everyone. That's the problem, Naruto sighed. I need to be good enough to be taken seriously, but not so good that I seem impossible. It's a balance. Too much skill, and I attract the wrong kind of attention. Too little, and I can't position myself to prevent future disasters. Then you'll have to play the fool sometimes, Kurama said. Hide your true capabilities behind a mask of incompetence. Wouldn't be the first time, Naruto muttered, thinking of how he'd often played the clown to hide his pain in his first childhood. Though it goes against everything I've learned. I spent so many years proving I wasn't the dead last, wasn't the loser everyone thought I was. Deliberately holding back feels wrong. Pride is a luxury, Kurama said, echoing Hagoromo's words. You're playing a long game now. What matters isn't your academy ranking. It's surviving long enough to prevent the apocalypse. I know, Naruto agreed. Doesn't make it easier. He turned away from the mirror and looked at the training equipment scattered around his apartment. Kunai he'd thrown with Zabuza's precision. Ice crystals he'd formed with Haku's bloodline. Medical texts he'd studied with Kabuto's knowledge. He was ready. More ready than any academy student had ever been. Tomorrow, his second journey through the academy would begin. He'd befriend the lonely. Strengthen the weak. Guide the lost. And slowly, carefully, change the fate of the world. Hey, Kurama? Naruto said suddenly. Yes? Thank you for being patient with me through all this. I know having a container who talks to himself and claims to have lived another life must seem insane. Kurama chuckled, a sound like distant thunder. Kit, I've been alive for over 1,000 years. I've seen things that would break human minds. A reincarnated ninja with multiple personalities and the power of his enemies? That barely cracks my top 10 weird experiences. Naruto laughed, genuinely amused. Well, when you put it that way. Get some sleep, Kurama advised. Tomorrow, you begin reshaping the world. You'll need your strength. Naruto nodded and climbed into bed, though sleep was slow to come. His mind was too active, planning strategies, remembering faces, preparing for the challenges ahead. As he finally drifted off, the voices whispered their final thoughts. Make them fear you, Madara suggested. Make them need you, Orochimaru advised. Make them understand you, Zabuza counseled. Make them love you, Haku whispered. And Naruto's own voice, his true self, said what he'd always believed. Make them believe. In themselves, in the future, in the possibility of change. That's always been my way. Tomorrow, the academy. Tomorrow, friendships would be forged and destinies altered. Tomorrow, the demon child would begin his new path, and the ninja world would never be the same. The academy building looked exactly as Naruto remembered it, a sprawling complex of classrooms and training grounds where the next generation of shinobi would begin their journey. But standing before it now, at 6 years old with 78 years of memories, the sight filled him with a complex mixture of nostalgia and determination. He'd walked through these doors once before as an ignorant, desperate child seeking acknowledgement. This time, he walked through them as perhaps the most dangerous academy student in Konoha's history. The classroom was already partially filled when Naruto arrived. He immediately recognized faces that would define his life, some for better, some for worse, all precious in their own way. Shikamaru Nara sat by the window, already looking bored despite class not having started. His posture screamed laziness, but Naruto knew the incredible intellect hidden beneath that facade. The boy who would become his chief strategist, his advisor, his friend who understood the weight of leadership. Choji Akimichi sat beside Shikamaru, munching on chips even at this early hour. The loyal companion who would nearly die fighting against the Sound Four, who would become one of Konoha's strongest fighters despite everyone underestimating him. Ino Yamanaka was chatting animatedly with a pink-haired girl, Sakura. Naruto felt a pang in his chest seeing his old teammate. In his first life, he'd had a childish crush on her for years. Now, looking at her with the perspective of age and experience, he saw a girl with incredible potential who would grow into one of the world's greatest medical ninja. But the romantic feelings were gone, replaced by the deep friendship they'd eventually developed. Kiba Inuzuka sat with Akamaru, his Neendog companion, already looking cocky and ready to prove himself. The loud, brash fighter who would mature into a reliable tracker and loyal friend. Shino Abirame sat alone in a corner, his high-collared jacket already hiding most of his face. The analytical genius whose insect techniques would prove invaluable countless times, but who struggled with being overlooked and forgotten. And then, in the back corner, trying to make herself invisible, was Hinata Hyuga. Naruto's breath caught. There she was, the girl who would become the woman he loved, who would bear his children, who would stand beside him through everything. But this wasn't that Hinata. This was a 6-year-old child, already beaten down by her father's disapproval, already convinced she was weak and worthless. Their eyes met across the classroom, and Hinata immediately looked away, a blush coloring her cheeks. Even now, even this young, that instinctive attraction existed between them. I'll protect you, Naruto thought. I'll make sure you never doubt yourself like you did before. But he couldn't rush to her side immediately. That would be strange and potentially overwhelming. He needed to be strategic about building these relationships. Instead, Naruto chose a seat between Shikamaru and Shino, deliberately positioning himself near two of the most observant students in class. Hey! Naruto said cheerfully to Shikamaru. Mind if I sit here? Shikamaru glanced at him with mild interest. It's a free country. Sit where you want, thanks. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Shikamaru Nara, the lazy genius replied. And that's Choji Akimichi. Nice to meet you, Choji said between bites of chips, his friendly nature already evident. And you are? Naruto turned to Shino, who seemed surprised at being directly addressed. Shino Abirame, came the quiet reply. Most people do not notice me. Well, I notice you, Naruto grinned. You've got a cool jacket. And are those bugs? A few insects crawled across Shino's collar, and the Abirame air seemed to straighten slightly at the interest. Yes. My clan specializes in insect-based techniques. The Kikaichi beetles live in symbiosis with us, feeding on our chakra in exchange for serving as weapons and tools. That's amazing, Naruto said with genuine enthusiasm. So they're like partners, not just tools? Shino tilted his head, his expression hidden but his body language suggesting pleased surprise. Yes. Exactly. Most people find them disturbing, but they are indeed partners. People fear what they don't understand, Naruto said, his tone momentarily carrying the weight of his true age before he caught himself and brightened again. But I think it's awesome. You'll have to tell me more about them sometime. From the corner of his eye, Naruto noticed Shikamaru studying him with slightly more interest. The Nara heir's intelligence meant he picked up on small inconsistencies, and Naruto's momentary lapse into philosophical wisdom had registered. Going to have to be more careful around that one, Naruto noted mentally. The classroom door opened, and Irika Yumino walked in, looking younger than Naruto remembered but already carrying that earnest dedication that made him such a good teacher. Behind him came Mizuki, and Naruto felt a flash of anger seeing the traitor who would eventually try to steal the scroll of seals and manipulate him into becoming a missing nin. Not this time, Naruto thought coldly. This time, I know exactly what you are. Good morning, class, Irika said warmly. Welcome to the Ninja Academy. I'm Irika Yumino, and this is Mizuki. We'll be your primary instructors for the next 6 years. 6 years? In his original timeline, Naruto had spent 6 years here, struggling and failing and barely scraping by. This time, he needed to complete the curriculum much faster. There was too much to do, too many threats to prepare for. But he also needed to maintain his cover, to seem talented but not impossibly so. It was going to be a delicate balance. Now then, Irika continued, let's start with introductions. Tell us your name, what clan you're from if applicable, and why you want to become a ninja. Who wants to go first? Sasuke's hand shot up immediately. Of course it did. He was an Uchiha, trained to excel, to stand out. Naruto caught his eye and grinned, and Sasuke smirked back slightly. Their friendship, built over the past year of training together, was already evident. Sasuke Uchiha, he said confidently. I want to become a powerful ninja to protect my family, and restore the Uchiha clan's honor. The emphasis on protect rather than avenge was the key difference. In the original timeline, Sasuke's goal had been vengeance against his brother. Now, with the massacre prevented, he had a different purpose, protection and honor rather than hatred and revenge. One life already changed for the better, Naruto thought with satisfaction. Several other students introduced themselves. Kiba proclaimed loudly that he'd become the greatest ninja ever and surpass his sister. Ino talked about mastering her clan's mind transfer techniques. Choji mentioned protecting his friends. Shino gave a detailed explanation of Abirame techniques that had several students looking confused. Then Hinata was called on, and Naruto watched as she stood up, trembling slightly. Hinata Hyuga, she stammered, her voice barely audible. I want to become stronger. To prove that I can. She trailed off, unable to finish, and sat down quickly, her face burning with embarrassment. Several students snickered, and Naruto felt his anger rise. That's enough, Irika said firmly, silencing the laughter. It takes courage to speak in front of others, especially about personal goals. Well done, Hinata. But the damage was done. Hinata looked even more dejected, convinced she'd failed at this simple introduction. Not for long, Naruto vowed. When his turn came, Naruto stood up with his characteristic energy. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm going to become the greatest Hokage ever, someone who protects everyone in the village. That's my ninja way, and I never go back on my word. It was almost exactly what he'd said in his first timeline, but with one key difference. He said it with the absolute conviction of someone who had already achieved that dream once. The words carried weight that made even Nezuki pause and look at him with calculating eyes. After introductions, Irika launched into the basics of what they'd be learning. Chakra theory, taijutsu, basic ninjutsu, weapons training, ninja history, and tactical thinking. It was all review for Naruto, but he listened attentively, noting how Irika explained concepts and where the curriculum's weaknesses were. The academy system was designed to produce competent genin, but it had flaws. Too much emphasis on rote memorization, not enough on creative thinking. Too much focus on traditional techniques, not enough adaptation to individual strengths. Too much standardization, not enough personalization. In his first life, Naruto had suffered under this system, his non-traditional learning style marking him as a failure. This time, he'd work within it while also pushing to change it. When class broke for lunch, Naruto made his first strategic move. Instead of sitting with Sasuke, whom he already knew, Naruto deliberately took his lunch to where Shikamaru and Choji had settled under a tree. Mind if I join you guys? He asked. Shikamaru shrugged. Troublesome, but sure. Choji immediately offered him some chips. Want some? They're barbecue flavor. Thanks. Naruto took a few, then settled in. For a few minutes, they ate in comfortable silence. Then, casually, Naruto asked, So Shikamaru, you looked bored in class. Already know all this stuff? Shikamaru glanced at him. Most of it. My dad's been teaching me clan techniques since I was 4. The academy basics are repetitive. Must be frustrating, Naruto said sympathetically. Being stuck in a class that moves too slow for you. How would you know it's frustrating? Shikamaru asked, his sharp eyes studying Naruto. You seem pretty engaged in class. Careful, Naruto warned himself. Just seems like it would be, you know? Like if you already knew how to do something but had to sit through someone explaining it anyway. Exactly that, Shikamaru confirmed. But what can you do? Skipping ahead would be too troublesome. More work, more expectations. Better to just coast and take it easy, is it though? Naruto asked. I mean, don't you want to be challenged? To push yourself? Shikamaru gave him a long look. You're weird, you know that? Most kids our age don't think about stuff like that. Maybe I'm not most kids, Naruto grinned. Obviously not, Shikamaru muttered, but there was a hint of a smile. Fine. What do you propose, oh wise Uzumaki? We could study together, Naruto suggested. Advanced stuff, beyond what they teach in class. Share knowledge, push each other. Make it more interesting. Choji perked up at this. Could I join too? I'm not as smart as Shikamaru, but I like learning new things. Of course, Naruto said warmly. The more the better. We could form a study group. Get some of the others involved too. Troublesome, Shikamaru sighed, but his eyes showed interest. But potentially less boring than the alternative. Fine. But I'm not doing anything that requires too much effort. Deal. Naruto agreed, knowing full well that once Shikamaru got interested in something, His legendary laziness disappeared. This was the beginning of building his network. In his first life, he'd been isolated for years, only forming close bonds after becoming genin. This time, he'd create connections early, build a support structure of talented individuals who could work together when the threats came. After lunch, as students filtered back to class, Naruto noticed Hinata sitting alone, looking melancholic. This was his chance. He walked over, and she immediately tensed, her Byakugan eyes widening slightly. "Hi," Naruto said cheerfully. "You're Hinata, right? Hinata Hyuga?" "Why yes," she stammered, looking down. I'm Hinata. I'm Naruto. Mind if I sit with you for a minute before class starts?" She looked shocked that anyone would want to sit with her. Okay." Naruto sat down beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "I thought what you said during introductions was really brave." Hinata's head snapped up, surprise evident on her face. "Be brave? But I could barely speak. I embarrassed myself." "You spoke about wanting to become stronger, about proving yourself," Naruto said gently. "That takes guts. A lot of people just said they wanted to be powerful or famous or whatever, but you talked about personal growth. That's way more important." Her face turned red, and she fidgeted with her fingers, a habit Naruto remembered fondly. You really think so?" "I know so," Naruto said firmly. "And I want you to know something, Hinata. You're not weak. I can tell just by looking at you, you've got strength inside. You just need to believe in it." "How can you tell?" she asked quietly. "My father says I'm too gentle, too kind to be a proper shinobi." Naruto felt anger flash through him at Hayashi Hyuga's harsh treatment of his daughter. "Being kind isn't a weakness. It's a strength. The strongest ninja the strongest ninja I've heard about, they were strong because they fought to protect people they cared about. Kindness gives you something to fight for. That makes you stronger, not weaker." Hinata stared at him, tears welling in her eyes. "No one's ever—" "Thank you, Naruto-kun." The kun honorific sent warmth through his chest. Even as children, even in this altered timeline, that connection existed between them. "Hey, some of us are forming a study group," Naruto said. "Want to join? We're going to work on advanced techniques, help each other get stronger. I think you'd be great for it." "Me?" Hinata looked astonished. "But I'm not. I don't know if I could." "You can," Naruto said with absolute certainty. "And you will. Trust me on this, okay?" She looked at him for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression, a small spark of hope, of determination. "Okay. I'll try." "That's all anyone can ask," Naruto smiled. As they walked back into the classroom together, Naruto noticed several things. Shikamaru watching them with analytical interest, Ino whispering to Sakura, looking curious about why the demon child was talking to the Hyuga failure, and Mizuki, the traitorous instructor, observing him with calculating eyes. The afternoon classes covered basic taijutsu. Irika demonstrated simple kata, the foundation movements that all academy students learned. For most of the students, this was new and challenging. For Naruto, who had mastered hundreds of fighting styles over his lifetime and now possessed the combat knowledge of multiple legendary ninja, it was almost painfully basic, but he couldn't show that. Not yet, so he deliberately made mistakes. He mimicked the clumsiness of a true beginner, stumbling over footwork, getting his arms positioned wrong, moving with the awkwardness of someone still growing into their body. Irika corrected him gently, showing him the proper form, and Naruto pretended to struggle before getting it right. But Shikamaru was watching him closely, and Naruto saw the moment the Nara heir's eyes narrowed with suspicion. After class, as students were leaving, Shikamaru cornered him. "You're faking it," the genius said bluntly. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "The taijutsu. You moved wrong, but not randomly wrong. You moved wrong in exactly the ways a beginner would, like you knew what mistakes to make. Your balance was perfect even when you pretended to stumble, and twice you corrected yourself before Irika even said anything, then pretended you hadn't. Damn it. Too smart for his own good. Why would I fake being bad at taijutsu?" Naruto asked, trying to deflect. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Shikamaru said, studying him. You're weird, Naruto. You talk like you're older than you are. You notice things other kids don't. You befriend the right people strategically. And now you're hiding your actual skill level. So I'll ask you straight, who are you really? Naruto considered his options. He could deny everything, but Shikamaru wouldn't believe him. He could make up a story, but the Nara heir would pick it apart. Or he could tell a partial truth, carefully calibrated to satisfy Shikamaru's curiosity without revealing everything. He chose the latter. Can you keep a secret? Naruto asked quietly. Shikamaru's interest was clearly piqued. Depends on the secret. But generally, yes. Naruto led him to a quiet corner of the academy grounds where they wouldn't be overheard. I'm a lot more trained than most academy students. The Hokage has been teaching me personally for the past 2 years. This was true if incomplete. Hiruzen had indeed been teaching him, though not to the extent Naruto's skills actually reflected. Shikamaru's eyebrows rose. The Hokage himself? Why? Because I'm the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, Naruto said bluntly. You're smart enough to have figured that out or to figure it out soon anyway. The Hokage wants to make sure I can control my power, that I become a loyal Konoha ninja. So he's been training me in secret. Shikamaru was quiet for a moment, processing. That actually makes sense. It would explain the villagers' attitudes toward you. And why you're more skilled than you're showing. But why hide it in the academy? Because if I dominate every class, every exercise, people will either fear me more or expect too much too fast, Naruto explained. I need to seem talented but normal. Gifted but not impossible. Otherwise, I'll be isolated even more than I already am. So you're playing the long game, Shikamaru said, a hint of approval in his voice. Building relationships, establishing yourself as capable but not threatening, creating a support network before revealing your true abilities. Exactly, Naruto confirmed. Troublesome, Shikamaru sighed. But also smart. Fine. I'll keep your secret. But in exchange, you have to promise to actually challenge yourself in our study group. No more faking incompetence when it's just us. Deal, Naruto agreed, relieved to have navigated that situation successfully. One more question, Shikamaru said. How much more skilled are you than you're showing? Naruto grinned. You'll find out during our first study session. Over the following weeks, Naruto settled into a careful routine. In class, he performed at a slightly above average level. Good enough to be respected, not so good as to seem impossible. He answered questions correctly but not always first. He completed exercises successfully but with visible effort. He maintained the facade of a talented but ultimately normal student. But outside of class, in the study group he'd formed with Shikamaru, Choji, Hinata, and Shino, he revealed more of his true capabilities. They met 3 times a week in unused training grounds, practicing techniques far beyond academy level. Naruto carefully introduced them to concepts they shouldn't learn for years: advanced chakra control, strategic thinking, combination attacks. Where did you learn this? Shino asked during their 3rd session, after Naruto had demonstrated a technique for disrupting an opponent's chakra flow. This is not academy curriculum. This is ANBU level knowledge. The Hokage teaches me a lot, Naruto said, which was becoming his standard excuse. And I read. A lot. This was true. Naruto spent hours in Konoha's library, devouring scroll after scroll. But what the others didn't know was that he was reading with the comprehension of multiple masters. When he studied medical texts, Kabuto's knowledge activated, allowing him to understand complex anatomical concepts that should be beyond a 6-year-old. The human body is merely a machine, Kabuto's voice would whisper. Once you understand the mechanisms, you can repair it, enhance it, or destroy it with equal ease. When he studied sealing theory, he drew on both his own eventual mastery and fragments of Orochimaru's forbidden knowledge. Seals are the closest thing to art in the shinobi world, Orochimaru's silky voice would purr. Reality itself, bound by symbols and will. Beautiful and terrible. When he read tactical treatises, Madara's strategic genius would surface, analyzing battles and seeing patterns that even experienced jonin might miss. War is not about individual strength, Madara's commanding presence would state. It's about controlling the battlefield, manipulating your enemy's choices, making victory inevitable before the first blow is struck. and when he studied the history of bloodline limits, Kagaya's ancient knowledge would stir, revealing truths about chakra that most ninja would never understand. Chakra is life, and life is chakra, her ethereal voice would echo. The Shinju tree, the Otsutsuki, the very origin of power in this world, all connected, all one. The voices were constant now, offering insights, suggesting techniques, tempting him toward forbidden knowledge. Naruto had learned to filter them, to take what was useful while rejecting the philosophical poison that came with it. But it was exhausting, maintaining his identity against their constant pressure. During one late-night library session, Naruto was deep in research about the Uchiha clan, gathering information that might help prevent any remaining threats to their safety, when he sensed a presence behind him. He didn't look up, but his awareness expanded, using chakra sensing abilities inherited from Pain's Rinnegan. The presence was masked, skilled, clearly a trained shinobi trying to remain hidden. Root, Naruto realized. Danzo's watching me. He continued reading as if unaware, but his mind raced. Danzo's investigation had been disrupted, but the old war hawk hadn't been completely neutralized. He still had influence, still had agents, and apparently he was interested in the Jinchuriki child who was showing unusual aptitude. Naruto carefully selected his next scroll, a basic text on elemental chakra theory, nothing that would seem unusual for an advanced student to study. He made a show of struggling with some of the concepts, occasionally looking confused, maintaining his cover. The presence observed for another 15 minutes, then withdrew silently. Once he was certain they were gone, Naruto allowed himself a quiet exhale. This was dangerous. If Danzo became too interested, he might try to recruit Naruto into Root, or worse, eliminate him as a potential threat. I need to be more careful, Naruto thought. Can't let them see too much. But even as he thought this, Orochimaru's voice slithered through his mind. Or you could eliminate the Watchers. You have the power. Kamui could make them disappear without a trace. Who would question it? Root operates in shadow. They can die in shadow. No, Naruto whispered firmly. That's not who I am. Then you're leaving enemies alive to strike at you later, Madara's voice countered. Foolish sentimentality. Remove threats before they can grow. They're not threats yet, Naruto argued quietly with the voices in his head. They're just watching. And maybe they should see a talented Jinchuriki who's loyal to Konoha, who's being trained by the Hokage, who's not a threat to village stability. Maybe that's exactly what Danzo needs to see to leave me alone. Or maybe you're just afraid to make the hard choices, Zabuza's gruff voice suggested. Maybe, Naruto admitted. But I'd rather be afraid and right than certain and wrong. The voices subsided, and Naruto returned to his research, though now with greater caution. 2 months into the academy year, Iruka announced a surprise field exercise. The students would be taken to Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death, for a basic survival and tracking drill. Nothing dangerous, he assured them, just an introduction to operating in wilderness environments. Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. The Forest of Death, where so many significant events had occurred in his first life. Where Orochimaru had attacked during the Chunin exams, where Sasuke had received the curse mark, where everything had begun to fall apart. In this timeline, the Chunin exams were still years away, and this was just a simple academy exercise. But still, the location carried weight for Naruto. The day of the exercise, 20 academy students gathered at the forest's edge. Iruka explained the rules: work in assigned teams of 4, navigate to a central checkpoint, collect a flag, and return. First team back wins. Simple enough. The teams were assigned randomly, or so it seemed. But Naruto suspected Iruka had been deliberate in his choices, trying to force students out of their comfort zones. Naruto's team consisted of himself, Hinata, a civilian-born student named Arata, and surprisingly Sasuke. This should be interesting, Sasuke smirked as they grouped up. Think you can keep up dead last? It was friendly teasing now, a callback to their training sessions, but several students who didn't know about their friendship looked shocked that an Uchiha would speak to Naruto at all. I'll try not to leave you in the dust, princess, Naruto shot back, using the nickname that always made Sasuke scowl. I'm not a princess. You style your hair for like 20 minutes every morning. That's princess behavior. Hinata giggled quietly at their banter, and even Arata smiled. The team dynamic was already forming, Naruto and Sasuke's competitive friendship as the core, with Hinata and Arata as supporting members. "Alright, everyone ready?" Iruka called out. "Remember, this is a team exercise. Work together, watch each other's backs, and don't take unnecessary risks. On my mark, begin!" 20 students rushed into the forest in 5 different directions. Naruto's team moved quickly but carefully, with Naruto taking point, Sasuke covering the rear, and Hinata and Arata in the middle. "Hinata," Naruto called back, "can you use your Byakugan to scout ahead?" She hesitated. I'm not very good at it yet. Father says my range is too limited." "That's okay," Naruto encouraged. "Any information is better than none. Just do your best." Hinata nodded, forming the hand seal. "Byakugan." The veins around her eyes bulged, and she gasped slightly. "I can see, there's a team about 200 meters to our left, moving toward the same checkpoint. And I think I can see the checkpoint itself, maybe 300 meters ahead, but there's something." "Something what?" Sasuke asked. "Something wrong," Hinata said, her voice uncertain. "There's a chakra signature at the checkpoint that doesn't feel like a flag. It's bigger. More active." Naruto's senses went on high alert. He extended his own chakra sensing, an ability he kept carefully hidden, and felt what Hinata had detected. She was right. There was something at the checkpoint, and it definitely wasn't just a flag. "Could be a test within the test," Sasuke suggested. "Maybe they stationed a Chunin there to make it more challenging." "Maybe," Naruto said, but his instincts were screaming danger. They proceeded more cautiously, with Naruto utilizing Zabuza's silent killing technique to mask their approach. The others didn't realize he was suppressing their sounds and presence, just thought they were being naturally quiet. As they neared the checkpoint, Naruto heard voices. Adult voices, speaking in low tones. "Shouldn't even be here," one was saying. "This is an academy exercise. If we're caught, we won't be caught," another voice interrupted, and Naruto felt his blood run cold. He recognized that voice from his first life, though he'd hoped never to hear it again in this timeline. "Mizuki. The demon brat is in one of the teams," Mizuki continued. "This is the perfect opportunity. An unfortunate accident during a training exercise. The Ninetales container dies, and no one can trace it back to us." Naruto's hand went instinctively to a kunai. Mizuki was planning to kill him here, during what should have been a safe academy exercise. But why now? In the original timeline, Mizuki hadn't made his move until much later, during the Scroll of Seals incident. "Are you sure about this?" the other voice asked nervously. Lord Danzo said to observe only, to gather intelligence on the Jinchuriki's capabilities. Danzo. Of course. The old war hawk was still moving against him, even if more subtly now. "Lord Danzo will thank us for removing a potential threat," Mizuki said confidently. "The demon child is too unpredictable, too powerful. Better to eliminate him now before he becomes dangerous." Naruto's team had stopped, everyone sensing something was wrong. Sasuke was tense, hand on his kunai pouch. Hinata's Byakugan was active, and her face had gone pale. Arata looked confused but frightened. "Naruto," Hinata whispered, "there are 2 of them at the checkpoint. Both have Chunin-level chakra. And one of them is that Mizuki-sensei?" "Yeah," Naruto confirmed quietly. "It is. What do we do?" Sasuke asked, his Sharingan flickering to life. He'd awakened it during their training sessions over the past year, another change from the original timeline. Naruto's mind raced through possibilities. They could retreat, report to Iruka, get help. That was the smart, safe option. But if they retreated, Mizuki would just try again later. And other students were heading toward this checkpoint. Someone was going to walk into this trap. He could fight, using the full extent of his abilities. Between his inherited powers and Sasuke's Sharingan, they could probably take down 2 Chunin. But that would reveal too much, raise too many questions. Or he could spring the trap deliberately, while making it look like lucky academy students overcoming unexpected danger. "Here's what we're going to do," Naruto said quietly, his tactical mind, enhanced by Madara's strategic genius, forming a plan. "Hinata, you're going to stay here with Arata. If things go wrong, You run back to Irika as fast as you can. Don't argue, he added as she opened her mouth to protest. We need someone who can report what happened, and your Byakugan makes you the best scout. Hinata looked like she wanted to object but finally nodded. Sasuke, you're with me, Naruto continued. We're going to walk into the checkpoint like we don't suspect anything. Stay alert, be ready to move when I give the signal. What signal? Sasuke asked. You'll know it when you see it, Naruto grinned, with more confidence than he felt. They moved forward, making noise now, acting like excited academy students who'd reached their objective. As they entered the clearing where the checkpoint was supposed to be, they found Mizuki standing there with another Chunin Naruto didn't recognize. Naruto! Sasuke! Mizuki said with false cheerfulness. Congratulations on finding the checkpoint first. Though I'm afraid there's been a complication. What kind of complication? Sasuke asked, his hand near his kunai pouch. The other Chunin moved to flank them, and Naruto saw Mizuki's smile turn cruel. The kind where demon children learn their place. Mizuki moved fast, throwing a kunai directly at Naruto's chest. To a normal academy student, the attack would have been almost impossible to dodge. But Naruto wasn't a normal academy student. He twisted, the kunai passing so close it cut his jacket, and his hand shot out, catching another kunai Mizuki had thrown in a hidden follow-up. The crowd-pleasing catch made Sasuke's eyes widen in surprise. Wow, that was close, Naruto said, forcing his voice to sound shaken. Mizuki-sensei, what are you doing? Eliminating a threat to Konoha, Mizuki snarled, dropping all pretense. The other Chunin moved towards Sasuke, who activated his Sharingan fully. Touch me and die, the young Uchiha said coldly. For a moment, the Chunin hesitated. Fighting an Uchiha, even a child, was dangerous. That moment of hesitation was all Sasuke needed. He moved through hand seals with practiced ease and breathed out a small but genuine fireball. The Chunin barely dodged, and Sasuke pressed his advantage, his taijutsu refined from months of training with Naruto showing clear superiority over academy standards. Meanwhile, Mizuki launched another attack at Naruto, this time with multiple kunai from different angles. Naruto could have dodged easily, could have countered with any number of his inherited techniques. Instead, he deliberately took a glancing hit on his shoulder, crying out in pain. The wound was real but shallow, and he felt Orochimaru's regeneration already working to heal it. Why are you holding back? Madara's voice demanded in his mind. End this fool. Show him what it means to threaten you. Because I'm not you, Naruto thought back. Because I need to seem like a lucky student, not a monster. Help! Naruto shouted, making sure his voice carried. Someone help us! Mizuki-sensei is trying to kill us. The shout served two purposes. First, it would bring Irika running. The instructor would hear that cry of distress from anywhere in the forest. Second, it established the narrative. Treacherous instructor attacks students, rather than demon child reveals impossible powers. Mizuki's face twisted with rage. Shut up, demon! You're not fooling anyone with that innocent act. He rushed forward with a kunai, aiming for a killing blow. This time, Naruto couldn't just dodge. He needed to defend himself in a way that seemed plausible for an advanced academy student. He formed hand seals, slowly enough to track, fast enough to be impressive, and slammed his palm on the ground. Water style, water wall. It was one of the few jutsu he could publicly use, something Hiruzen had taught him. A wall of water rose from the moisture in the forest floor, blocking Mizuki's attack. But Naruto had put too much power into it, drawing on Zabuza's mastery of water manipulation without thinking. The wall was far larger than it should have been, far more controlled. Mizuki's eyes widened in shock. How did a brat like you? He didn't get to finish. Irika burst into the clearing, having heard Naruto's cry for help, and his face went white seeing what was happening. Mizuki! Stand down immediately! Irika, Mizuki spat, you don't understand. This demon child, he's too dangerous. He just performed a B-rank water jutsu perfectly. He's not normal. He's a student under my protection, Irika said coldly, his killing intent washing over the clearing. And you just attempted to murder him. You have 3 seconds to surrender before I put you down. The other Chunin, seeing how badly this had gone, immediately dropped his weapons and raised his hands. I surrender. Mizuki said it was a sanctioned operation. I didn't know he was acting alone. Mizuki looked between Iraka's fury and Naruto's careful expression of fear, and something seemed to break in him. Fine. You want to protect a demon? You'll see. You'll all see when it destroys everything. He threw a smoke bomb and fled into the forest. Iraka moved to pursue, but Naruto called out, Sensei, wait. Sasuke needs help. Iraka stopped, torn between pursuit and protecting his students. Duty to the students 1. He secured the captured Chunin with a rope seal and moved to check on Sasuke, who had finished subduing his opponent but had taken a few hits in the process. Are you both alright? Iraka asked, his voice shaking slightly with residual anger and fear. I'm okay, Naruto said, showing his shoulder wound. It's not deep. I'm fine, Sasuke added. Though if Naruto hadn't shouted when he did, this could have gone badly. Hinata and Naruto rushed into the clearing, having heard the commotion. Hinata immediately ran to Naruto, her eyes wide with worry. Naruto-kun! You're hurt. It's nothing, Naruto assured her, though he allowed her concern to touch him. We're all safe now. Iraka was already activating a signal flare, calling for ANBU backup. Within minutes, masked operatives appeared, securing the captured Chunin and taking statements. The exercise was immediately cancelled, and all students were returned to the academy. But as they walked back, Naruto caught Sasuke studying him thoughtfully. That water jutsu, Sasuke said quietly, so only Naruto could hear. That wasn't normal. That was way too advanced for an academy student, even with the Hokage's training. I got lucky, Naruto deflected. Adrenaline, you know? Right, Sasuke said, clearly not believing it. Lucky. Just like how you caught those kunai without looking. Just like how you formed seals faster than most genin. Just like how you knew exactly when to call for help. What are you saying? Sasuke stopped walking and looked directly at him. I'm saying you're hiding something big, Naruto. And whatever it is, it's not normal. But you're my friend, so I'm not going to push. Just be careful, okay? The village has enough people who fear you already. Don't give them more reasons. I'll be careful, Naruto promised, grateful for Sasuke's loyalty even across timelines. The aftermath of the Mizuki incident sent shockwaves through Konoha. A Chunin instructor had attempted to murder an academy student, not just any student, but the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki under the Hokage's personal protection. The captured Chunin confessed under interrogation that Danzo had ordered surveillance of Naruto, though he claimed Mizuki had acted independently in attempting the assassination. Danzo denied everything, of course. There was no direct evidence linking him to Mizuki's actions, but the incident gave Hiruzen more ammunition in his ongoing investigation of Root, and Danzo's influence was further curtailed. Mizuki himself had vanished, becoming a missing nin. Inbu was dispatched to hunt him, but Naruto suspected the traitorous instructor had help from someone, possibly Orochimaru, who collected useful pawns. For Naruto, the incident had both positive and negative consequences. On the positive side, he demonstrated loyalty to Konoha, bravery in defending himself and his teammates, and skill that, while advanced, could be attributed to the Hokage's training. Several villagers who'd previously scorned him now saw him in a slightly better light. On the negative side, he'd revealed more of his capabilities than he'd wanted to. The water jutsu, the reflexes, the tactical thinking, all of it was being analyzed by ANBU, by Danzo's remaining agents, and by anyone with an interest in the Jinchuriki. 3 days after the incident, Hiruzen summoned Naruto to his office. Sit down, Naruto, the Hokage said kindly, gesturing to a chair. His pipe was unlit, a sign that this was serious. We need to talk about what happened in the Forest of Death. Naruto sat, keeping his expression appropriately nervous for a 6-year-old who'd nearly been killed. Am I in trouble, Gigi? No, Hiruzen assured him quickly. You did everything right. You defended yourself, protected your teammates, and called for help. I'm very proud of you. Then what's wrong? Hiruzen sighed, suddenly looking every one of his years. Naruto, that water jutsu you used. I taught you the theory, yes, but I never expected you to master it so quickly, or with such power. And your reflexes, your tactical awareness, They're far beyond what someone your age should possess, even with advanced training. Here it comes, Naruto thought. The questions I can't fully answer. I've been trying really hard, Naruto said carefully. Training every day, studying all the scrolls you gave me. I want to be strong enough to protect people. Is that wrong? Not wrong, Hiruzen said gently. Never wrong. But concerning. Naruto, I need you to be honest with me. Is the Nine Tails influencing you? Are you hearing voices, feeling urges that aren't your own? The irony of the question wasn't lost on Naruto. He was hearing voices, just not Kurama's. The echoes of his inherited enemies whispered constantly, offering power and knowledge. But he couldn't explain that. I talk to the fox sometimes, Naruto admitted truthfully. In my head, in the seal. But he's not making me do anything. Mostly he just complains about being locked up. This was true enough. Kurama had been surprisingly cooperative, even helpful, as Naruto built their relationship years ahead of schedule. Hiruzen looked relieved. That's actually a good sign. Many Jinchuriki can't communicate with their tailed beasts at all. The fact that you can suggest a strong will. But Naruto, I need you to promise me something. If you ever feel like you're losing control, if the fox or any other influence tries to take over, you come to me immediately. Understood? I promise, Gigi, Naruto said sincerely. Good, Hiruzen smiled, finally lighting his pipe. Now, regarding your training going forward. Given your demonstrated abilities, I think it's time we accelerate your curriculum. I'm going to assign you a private tutor in addition to your academy studies. Someone who can challenge you properly without raising too many questions. Who? Naruto asked, genuinely curious. Kakashi Hatake, Hiruzen said. He's currently between A and BU assignments, and I think his unique skill set would benefit you greatly. Naruto's heart clenched. Kakashi. His sensei from his first life, the man who'd taught Team 7, who'd been there through so many battles. But this Kakashi was different, still deep in his ANBU phase, still traumatized by Rin's death, still running from his pain. The copy ninja? Naruto said, letting appropriate awe color his voice. He'd really train me? I've already spoken with him, Hiruzen confirmed. He was reluctant at first. Kakashi doesn't take students. But I convinced him that training the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki was a critical duty to the village. He'll meet you tomorrow at Training Ground 3. This was unexpected but potentially valuable. If Naruto could reach Kakashi early, help him heal from his trauma before it calcified into chronic depression, that would be another life saved, another piece of the future improved. Thank you, Gigi, Naruto said warmly. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Hiruzen said, ruffling his hair affectionately. You're a special child, Naruto. I see so much of your father in you. He would be proud. After leaving the Hokage's office, Naruto wandered through Konoha, lost in thought. The encounter with Mizuki had forced his hand, revealed more than he'd wanted, but it had also created opportunities. Training with Kakashi, increased protection from the Hokage, a chance to demonstrate his loyalty to the village. He found himself at the memorial stone, where Konoha's fallen heroes were honored. Standing before it was a figure in ANBU gear, mask removed, revealing the silver hair and scarred eye of Kakashi Hatake. Naruto approached quietly. Sensei? Kakashi turned, his visible eye studying Naruto with that lazy intensity the copy ninja was known for. So you're the Jinchuriki I'm supposed to train. You're smaller than I expected. I'm 6, Naruto pointed out. Fair enough, Kakashi said, turning back to the stone. The Hokage tells me you're some kind of prodigy. That you performed the B-rank jutsu perfectly despite your age. That you handled yourself against the traitorous Chunin with unusual competence. I got lucky, Naruto deflected. Luck is what the incompetent call skill when it makes them uncomfortable, Kakashi said. You were skilled, and you know it. The question is why? What drives a 6-year-old to push himself so hard? Naruto looked at the memorial stone, at the names carved there. In his first life, Kakashi's name would have eventually been added. Jiraiya's too, and Niji's, and so many others who had died protecting the village. I don't want anyone to die because I wasn't strong enough to save them, Naruto said quietly, speaking from the heart of his 78 years of experience. I don't want to stand at stones like this, and read the names of people I could have protected if I'd just been better, faster, stronger. Kakashi's eye widened slightly, and he looked at Naruto with